Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Future of Plan Management webinar. We did have about a 30-second delay for some technical difficulties, but we're here now, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Angela Vithoulkas, Non-Executive Director of Credability Systems. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Gadigal people on where we have gathered, and to acknowledge the leaders, both past, present and emerging. Now, we're starting our webinar series with this particular headline, The Future of Plan Management, and we're starting, hopefully, we are at the beginning of a very long journey, but a very fruitful one with our Plan Managers Advocacy Group. I'd like to, again, just give you a little bit of background on why Credability has brought me on board. Again, originally I was invited, and I hope for many reasons, to join the board, but mainly because of my history in advocating for small business. Now, that's on top of the 10 years I spent fighting politics in City of Sydney, and that was on behalf of the thousands and thousands of small business owners there, and the 3 decades of being a small business owner myself. Now, we all know the troubles that small business owners fight on a regular basis, but unfortunately, I have the unique perspective of losing my business from a government decision, fighting government on it, and winning. So I hope what I bring to the table on behalf of Credability and the advocacy group that we've started off is the spirit of fighting for small business, but also the determination of making sure that you're going to be heard. And that has been the one commonality that we found in the months now since the NDIS review has been released, is that plan managers, support coordinators, a lot of providers have not felt heard. In fact, they were quite shocked by what happened when the review was released and by the remarks of Minister Shorten at the press club. We all feel like we've been left picking up pieces of something that was entirely unexpected and unfortunately quite hard hitting for the thousands of small business owners and their families and the people that work in those businesses. I'd like to start with our very special guest today, Liberal Senator for New South Wales, Senator Hollie Hughes, Shadow Assistant Minister for NDIS. Welcome, Senator.
Thanks, Angela.
Now, we know you're flat out this morning or this afternoon. You've got a lot on, and we appreciate the time that you've given to us. Senator, you have personal experience of the NDIS, and I hope you'll share some of that with us just to give us context. And then let's get stuck straight into it.
Okay, so I have had a lot of experience with the NDIS. My son has autism, level 3, and we started our autism journey before the NDIS and then joined it a few years along our journey. So I've had experience of what it was like pre-NDIS, and then we were lucky that in the sense that we were part of, we had attended one of Northcott's events, which had sort of tagged us in the system. So we sort of went straight on to the NDIS. So I never had to go through that application process that I know so many people find challenging. But I have had my plan cut in half when we had a good year. I have faced all sorts of obstacles. Just recently, I self-managed my son's plan, and I couldn't access it for over 6 weeks because I had been taken off and then put back on as his authorised representative, but the new system was obviously not accepting that. So there was a whole lot of phone calls, a whole lot of IT tickets, and having to elevate it as well. So I understand.
You've had experience, Hollie, firsthand of when the computer said no.
Yep, absolutely. Well, today I put a claim in for my son's therapies last week, and for some reason it's come back, and I don't know why. And to be honest, I just resubmitted it this morning because I know how to do it and it doesn't take me very long. But I thought if I go and ring them and go, what's the problem? It'll take me 3 hours on the phone. So,
which you don't have.
That I don't have. So, I do understand the frustrations and the challenges that are faced by participants utilising the NDIS.
So what are your thoughts on the NDIS review, the time frame, the delivery, the announcement? etc.?
Yeah, look, I kind of feel like we're still in a bit of limbo land, because a review is one thing. What the government's going to do with that review is a whole different ball game, and that's where the rubber really hits the road. Now, I'm hearing just this week that Bill Shorten is keen to put some legislation to the Parliament next week. I have not seen this legislation. I do not know what it looks like. And I've also heard disturbingly this morning that people that have been consulted on it have been forced to sign NDA disclosure, so they can't talk to anyone about it, which this was a government that was supposed to be about transparency, yet the people they're consulting, and I don't know who that is, are being forced to sign NDAs so that they can't share that information more widely. So it is going to be interesting to see what Bill Shorten brings forward. When I was appointed to this position just a couple of weeks ago, but that being said, I am Deputy Chair of the Joint Standing Committee on the NDIS and have been on the NDIS committee since being elected. I had a couple of journalists call me and they were like, so what do you think about the reviews and the plans that Minister Shorten's putting forward? And I said, well, he hasn't put anything forward. He's talked a lot, but he actually hasn't done a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what he does try to put through next week. It hasn't come to the Joint Standing Committee. I certainly haven't seen anything around it. I know that Jordan Steele-John, the Greens representative, hasn't seen anything around it. So it's all a bit of a wait and see.
So, Senator, I've had some experience in government. Obviously, yours is by far a lot deeper and for a lot longer. It can be seen on the outside looking in that this is the normal habit of our politicians to hide things until the last minute so they can push things through. The shocking part here, though, Senator, and there are thousands of plan managers, hundreds of thousands of participants who are getting very little or no information and have a lot of fear.
Yeah.
So people's jobs, businesses, etc. So,
and there's a lot of fear generally, and I'd like to say when it comes to the NDIS, it's certainly this government's modus operandi. When we were in government, and I was very vocal from the backbench coming in on this system and the NDIS itself, because I actually very firmly believe in it. And I think all Australians should be invested in it, whether they're involved with it now or not, because it is there for all of us. And for the birth of a child with a disability or an accident of a loved one, you don't know when you or your family might need it. So it is something that we should be invested in. There is a lot of fear at the moment, and I understand, particularly after Minister Shorten's comments on the weekend around for plan managers, but families and their carers and participants have been particularly concerned when we keep hearing about an 8% growth cap. But the Senate has an order for the production of documents. We have, as the Senate, said that the government must present the modelling and the documents they use to get to that 8% growth cap, and they are refusing to do so. So Jordan Steele-John and I, we refer to it as NDIS Monday. He and I speak to it every single Monday, every time the government comes in and gives us an absolutely ridiculous excuse as to why they won't present the documents. At estimates the other night, we learnt that what the actuarial report was saying, and it was saying that basically this 8% cap growth is a ridiculous ask. It's not going to be achievable. That the actuary at the NDIA basically acknowledged that, they had not put the actuarial role over that. So there's grave concerns there, because this is a demand-driven scheme. So there's two ways you pull it back. You cut the participants, or you cut the plans. That's it. They're the two ways. You cut the NDIS. And we don't know which one of them they are. We don't know what the plan for that is. We don't know what the federal government's looking for to the states. I mean, I always advocated that the states vacated the field, that the financial agreement was incorrect when it basically let the states off scot-free for any expansion in costs above inflation that the NDIS had. And so we know that the states vacated the field when it came to education, community health, and mental health services, and a whole lot of other areas that they just kind of pushed off to the NDIS.
And they're pushing back now. They're pushing back now, Senator. Even New South Wales, we have our budget about to come down, and Mookie was very vocal in coming forward and saying we haven't got any money.
Yeah, well,
we're done.
at the end of the day, though, constitutionally, they're required to do certain things. So, you know, there's things that do not fall within the NDIS remit that are within the NDIS at the moment. And so there does need to be a bit of a reckoning, I think, and everyone should probably be prepared for that. And the reason for that is the sustainability of this scheme is critical. And there are a lot of people on the scheme that probably shouldn't be. There are people staying on it for longer that probably should be on it. There's probably, well, we know that there is an awful lot of waste that goes on that needs to be better managed. But for people like me who've got a son, that when I can't look after him anymore, I need to know that there'll be supports in place for him. So the families of people with a disability are probably the most focused people on the sustainability of this scheme.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that is where we're landing. But you know what the government has done with this 8% growth cap, they have baked into the budget, because they've put this in the budget that it's going to be capped at 8%, a $60 billion black hole. So if it doesn't get down to this 8%, and it's not, at the moment it's over 15% growth, if the growth, which is where it's projected it's still going to go, it'll top $60 billion. And so that's going to be there for either the next government or the one after to fix. And, you know, if some government's faced with having to find $60 billion, the cuts are going to be severe. And that's why this government needs to be open, be transparent. We always try to work in a bipartisan way. And look, I've known Bill Shorten for a long time, and I know this is not the job he wants. We know the job that he did want.
We are feeling overall, I mean, speaking as a small business owner, and I've only just begun to become immersed in the whole NDIS world in the last year, but to hear a elected person of senior level like Bill Shorten come out on the weekend and call plan managers parasitic pen pushers.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that I've had a bit of a giggle every now and then over the past decade on the fringes of politics on, you know, what everyone might say about each other, but to make a personal attack on small business owners, and these particular small business owners who are looking after 62% of participants, to come out and refer to them like that, surely, Senator, this is a man who's way out of his depth here.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter as well, when they used to talk about the additional costs and how expensive the NDIS was and rorting of the NDIS, the way that this government always framed it was that it was the participant level. And I've always made the argument that we've always got to be more careful at the provider level, because the participants are utilising the service. They're paying for what they get. If there's any fraud, if there's any misbehaviour going on, it's generally at the provider level. And so the fact that participants were the ones being demonised originally, I think they were off the mark as well. But, you know, there are going to have to be made some hard decisions made. I don't know whether Bill's up to doing it, and particularly if he wants bipartisan support. I mean, when we were talking to him, when we were in government and saying, this is getting too big too fast, this is, you know, that we need to make sure we're focusing on sustainability, I think he referred to us as pearl clutching kabuki players. Like, he denied there was any sustainability issues. He was out there saying everything's great, this is ridiculous. And now we're in a position where the sustainability of this scheme is at the forefront of the debate and something that needs to be dealt with.
And the low-hanging fruit could be the plan managers as a target, but it's almost like, look over here, don't look over here, take your eye away, and it's a magic trick that's not going to work. Senator, thank you very much for joining us today in our webinar. We hope to have you back. I know there's a lot to talk about, particularly if Bill wants to put forward some legislation in a week and nobody knows what it is. Clearly a very well kept secret, which is unusual for Canberra.
And keep in mind, though, too, we've only got, so I don't think we voted on it yet, but we will be this afternoon. We won't be sitting next Thursday. The House has already decided not to sit next Thursday, with it being Good Friday, so that people can get home to their families. But we haven't even seen the legislation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of legislation to come that they're going to want to put through before budget, because we don't return to Parliament until the budget. So we don't know what they're going to put up. And this government loves to guillotine debate. So we might see legislation come up next week that we don't even get a chance to debate. So you need to be, if this is not right, if this is coming through and they're going to try and bulldoze things, this is when advocacy, you guys are going to have to be on the phone to your local members. You're going to have to be in the media. You're going to have to be out there because your window will be very, very small.
Well, we'll need your help, so we'll be reaching out.
Absolutely. Well, you know I'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thanks, Angela.
So this is the future of plan management temporarily. We're facing challenges, as you've heard. We could be looking at in the next week of legislation coming through, none of which we know about, but we do know that it's NDIS specific. That should in itself provide a little bit of drive, if you will. I've just seen some information pop up that's relevant to us. As an advocacy group, we've applied for a petition that we are putting through Canberra or through government and Parliament House. Once we've got that final okay, which I think we've got today, we'll be circulating that to everyone. We're hoping that you'll all participate in signing the petition. My goal is to get at least 10,000 signatures and make Minister Shorten and every other politician aware that there are people here who can influence votes, because coming at this from a politician advocacy performance base, that's what politicians care about. That's where the pain factor is. Will they get elected again? Is that in jeopardy? And that's where your power lies. Now, I have a little bit of housekeeping to highlight for you just before we go to our next guest, which is our CTO. We're recording the webinar today, surprise, in case you didn't know that. And we will be making the link available to everyone if you have registered with the advocacy group. So if you haven't, where you registered for the webinar, there is an area there to register for the advocacy group. That will give you heaps of information, including the upcoming petition that we've got for government, and some surveys and some questionnaires that we want to take all that stats and data to Bill, hopefully on Friday, because we'll be in Canberra for the conference, which I'll get to. The chat function is turned off. That's for a reason. I don't want you sidetracked. I want you to focus on what our guests and our experts have to say today. The Q&A function is up and working. If you have any questions and they are relevant to either the speaker that was happening, I know we didn't give you much room with Hollie, but moving forward, we'll try to get to them. If not, we do have a Q&A right at the end, so we'll get to as many as we can. But we do uphold that we will take a record of all of them and get back to you. We'll take them all on notice. When you do get the link to the webinar, we will publish our version of frequently asked questions that came through the webinar with our answers, and we will seek subject matter experts on those if we don't already know them. Now, our next guest, I'm a little bit excited because I do know him very well. Our next guest is Simon Edwards. He's our Chief Technical Officer of Credability Systems. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much, Angela.
And I just want to preface that the reason I invited Simon to speak today is not because he's with Credability. In fact, you'll find that except for me, and I'm a non-executive board director, we don't have any other Credability staff involved. The reason for Simon is from a technical aspect. I wanted him to highlight a few things because that's where the challenges are going to be if any new systems are introduced and you're all experiencing the pain of pace, and what the future of any complex situations might be. Simon, can you give us a little bit of a brief on what you and your team do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Angela. I think on a daily basis, what we do in our Credability Systems team, in the support team and the development teams, is have, as best as possible, a good connection with our plan managers. They're our clients. We start with an onboarding process. We get to know the systems that they're using, whatever their platforms are. We get to know the way that they do things in plan management, so we can bring them onto our system. That's part of our onboarding process. And through our support and training, we learn about the way they do things. I think that's an important part of, in software development, is obviously understanding the requirements, things, having that transparency and clarity. we take that to our business development or our business analyst teams, and they work with our developers and work out how to build the systems and the functions that the plan managers need. That's all before lunch.
What I want to highlight, the reason that I've asked Simon to take us through this is because that is the bare minimum that you hope and expect that the NDIS and the NDIA behind the scenes, you hope that any systems that they're going to be introducing moving forward, that they are stepping through these things. And my new big phrase and terminology at the moment is human-centered design because of my other work that I do and how inclusive it needs to be when you are designing a new system that humans are going to be using, even though they are trying to eliminate one section of the humans of plan managers. It is important that you design systems that actually work for the humans that are going to be using them. And that's why, Simon, I wanted you to speak today, because that's essentially what you do. Now, you and I had a little bit of a disagreement on how I was phrasing yesterday the payments challenge that some people were facing yesterday, or many people were facing. I called it a payments interruption. You said to me, no, that's not what it was. There was no outage. But it was the fraud task force looking around at things and delaying payments. Now, this new fraud task force, or starting their work there, if this is what's going to happen when they're supposedly checking on things and payments are going to be delayed for days, how is that going to inspire any confidence in customers and clients? If we did this, how would we expect our customers and clients to respond?
Well, as I say, I think the important thing to understand is it seems, well, it's not new. It wasn't out of the blue. We had some warning that this type of thing was coming. What we understand is that there will be new delays of 2 to 3, maybe up to 10 days. What we've seen in recent weeks is that's happening sporadically. But now, after, I think yesterday, and we saw it in the socials, it's, it seems to be widespread delays, and that's impacting service providers' payments, the plan managers getting questioned about it. Obviously, that creates stress for the participants themselves when their service providers aren't getting looked after. Those sorts of things, they're going to create delays, create problems. What we don't really have and didn't have there is that they're specifically going to start here on the 19th. It's going to slow right down. I think that's the way that it's going to continue from here on for a bit as they analyse the data that's coming through.
So this is a new advanced slow system? As far
as we are aware, I mean, I think they clearly need to be working on. We obviously all know about PACE, and the NDIS have made a commitment not to work on the legacy system so much, and obviously focus their attention on the PACE system moving forward. I think what they've got to do is it really finish that off. We know that that's slowed down a little bit on the rollout. That's now had to be paced back a bit. No doubt. That's due to backlog of issues that are needing to be handled. And once that gets going, that's where the new system that they're working on and any payment and fraud measurements needs to be focused. So I think that's where the attention needs to be.
Now, I did expect that we would run out of time, and I did extend a little bit with Senator Hughes, but could you briefly comment or take us through the review highlighted that there's a emphasis on eliminating plan managers, and that they are possibly looking at replacing plan managers with a multi-channel payments platform, because a fully automated system is always going to be way better than humans, apparently. Can you take us through a little bit of how complex that actually is going to be, or would be, from a design, operation, execution purpose? We all feel like it feels like this is all going to happen tomorrow, eliminating plan managers. The reality is it can't happen tomorrow. But as we've heard with Senator Hughes, there could be legislation next week that sets a roadmap out in some way. So it's a complex situation, though, to try and replace this, right, with an automated multi-channel payments platform.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it's obviously, from a tech point of view, we do need to engage with AI and machine learning to look for fraud, look for these things. Would be crazy to say that we shouldn't do it, but it needs to be coupled, as you said, with human, interaction. That's and I think from software development in my years, the part that's critical is understanding the requirements, gathering that information. What we don't seem to be seeing here is getting the information from the plan managers themselves. These are the ones that have been dealing with the providers for years, dealing with the participants. They've got the finger on the pulse. And for those plan managers that I've spoken to, they're not consulted, haven't been consulted. That's a critical part of the whole way of developing systems, is your requirements gathering process, getting the detail. We're in the dark at the moment. That's I think the main issue. The complexities of those systems, can it be done? Of course, those things can be done. Can government necessarily pull that off in a manageable time frame in the efficiencies that we need? I think that's up for question.
Well, you're being kind about it. I can't see all of the almost 350 people that have joined, I think, but I feel like we all might be nodding in no. The government has not a proven track record in being able to design systems that work even 60 or 70% of the time. I'm the last to say that we don't have good government, because I feel we are quite fortunate in Australia. We have great democratic government. I feel that the one thing we don't do here is voice where we're going, and this is going to be a technical component of moving forward of the NDIS, and I just hope we're all aware that we do need to voice something here. Simon, we're going to be relying on chief technical officers in all shapes and form across all businesses, so maybe you need to have as much of a conversation as I am with people on the questions that we should be asking and sharing that, and that's something that I'd like to look at with you moving forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Angela.
All right, we're down to the nitty-gritty. Just before I bring our amazing panel on board, I want to remind everyone this Friday in Canberra is the NDIS conference review. I'm going to be down there. I think two of our panelists are going to be down there as well. Jess, Harper is speaking. And Bianca and I are having girls' night maybe on Thursday. So if you are going to be in Canberra on Friday, please reach out to us. I'm very easy to get a hold. I'd love to grab a coffee and talk more with you. I am dragging our CEO, Phil, down to Canberra as well. And just a quick reminder that the following week, there's the DSC conference in Sydney. I'm going to that as well. So if you're going to be at either of those and you want to reach out and connect with us, our panelists will be there in one way, shape or form. Happy to introduce, happy to have further conversations with you all, and making sure that we, as Senator Hughes said, we don't have a lot of time. Okay, getting down to the serious aspect of what we're talking about, and people who are far better experts than me. I'd like to welcome Bianca Shapiro, COO of MyCareSpace. Hi, Bianca.
Hey, how are you going?
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Jess Harper, CEO for Disability Intermediaries Australia, otherwise known as DIA. Thank you. You've just come off a webinar, Jess.
It's constant at the moment, trying to speak to as many people in the sector as we can.
And as you just heard Hollie say, we don't have a lot of time, or we might not. Rehan, Lowmass, GM of Orange Plan Management, welcome.
Hey, how you going?
Yes, look, that's the question, right? How are we going? Now, I put some questions to our panelists, everyone. We've, talked offline, online in different ways over the past few weeks. Jess and I have been talking for a few months. There was one question I warned everyone that I would start the panel with. I am looking at getting a response from all three of them before we get into juicier bits. You can tell that I focused on one particular thing, everyone. So I want to know, how did you all feel, both personally in your business roles, maybe in family members, other people who are using the NDIS? How did you feel with the most recent comments that Bill Shorten put out on the weekend, of notable mention, and I've used it quite a few times, calling plan managers parasitic pen pushers? Bianca, I'm going to go with ladies first.
I mean, thoroughly shocked. It's a massive generalization to make about an industry when in any part of the NDIS, we're going to have the goodies and the baddies. And we've seen that MyCareSpace has been in the market for 7 years now, working with providers and with people with disabilities. And we see those amazing providers and we see those bad providers and we turn them away. So then to just single out one type of provider and make a statement about that is, yeah, it's not cool, Bill. Absolutely not cool.
So were you horrified?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean,
with the way that it was
a team that are proud to be plan managers. They are talking to people every day. That is how we differentiate our own selves in the marketplace, in that we support people and we talk to them and we give them that bit extra. But Bill's just standing there and making a generalization and putting everybody into the bad egg basket, which is completely unacceptable.
Rehan, you're a lot more measured than Bianca and I. I'm probably easily fired up, and Bianca won't be too far behind me. You're a lot more measured, and I've asked you this question already offline, but share with everyone, you're a calm, sensible, measured person. How did you feel?
I think, yeah, similar to Bianca. I think the biggest thing is probably just disappointment that there was such a generalization as well. I think especially when you're looking at your smaller plan managers, and it's the same for a director who was helping to get Orange up and running and initially got involved. Like, a lot of people get involved because of family and because they've seen impacts of like poor service quality, delays in just them trying to help their family get supports in place. And I guess, yeah, like, having staff feel like you've just been labelled altogether, when I know we've got staff very proud to be on the phone and have built relationships with participants. We've got participants who really engage with us in terms of wanting to really manage their supports and plan manager, and they're all on board. So there's not this, we're not very hands-off, and I don't think the industry as a whole is extremely hands-off in dealing with clients. And yeah, the government needed plan management. They made plan management as a role to help them get this scheme out and
legislated plan managers. Yeah.
And I think it was today, I'm not sure when the article came out, I only saw a couple snippets, but there's news about Services Australia delays in terms of Medicare reimbursements, Centrelink payments, which fortunately there's obviously payment issues within the NDIA space, but at the moment, plan management's probably serving to help alleviate a lot of that. So yeah, I would have liked to see a more collaborative approach, I guess, initially with the so-called good plan managers mentioned in that article, to help fix the gaps and weed out where these problems are.
So as I highlighted, Rehan's a lot more calm and measured than I would be. Jess,
it seems unwarranted, don't you think, Angela? It seems unwarranted.
There is no reason for a politician to behave like that and use those words, targeting specific groups of people, particularly in this kind of industry. I wouldn't tolerate it about anyone being spoken about like that and labelling. We are supposed to be measured as a cohort politicians. I still say we, and I'm not anymore. I'm a civilian, but we are supposed to be measured. We are supposed to be sensible. You're not supposed to incite riots and burning buildings. And when you say that, that's what happens. I personally was feeling a lot more in control over the whole thing until that comment. Jess, you're calm, you're measured. We'd had a discussion on Thursday. How come
everyone else is calm and measured except for me?
Well, you know, I spoke to Jess at length on last week, and at no point did either of us sound panicked or unhappy. And that's a politically correct way of putting it. Jess, when those comments came out, you guys, DIA was very quick off the mark to release a press release, which I felt was spot on, and kudos to you. Thank you. But it was still calm and measured. So, you know, that is your job. But how did you feel? Because you weren't happy when I spoke to you.
Oh, look, I think in my role, you don't often get a lot of time to kind of think and feel. The minute it hit the press, as you can imagine, you know, my Sunday was 1,525 phone calls from providers and members and the sector. So it was, you know, a pretty rough weekend for us. And then obviously engaging with our board from a strategy perspective about what our response was going to be. Look, we've seen gaffes and we've seen language from the minister that is, less than ideal for those amazing providers that are delivering excellent service. And I think that we can add this one to the long list. But equally, we've also seen this, in previous government and previous crossbenchers. We've been called a cottage industry. We've been called, ticket clippers. Now we've been called parasitic pen pushers. So from that perspective, it wasn't unsurprising. When we look at plan management as a sector, we're an easy target. We're in the financial realm, and financial services just generally are an easy target for government. So that was obviously kind of very, very disappointing to see. On the flip side, and to again be balanced and measured as much as possible, we also recognise in DIA, we own the truth of the sector that there are some really dodgy players out there.
Correct.
And as we said in our statement, there is no room for them in our sector, and they should be shown the door. And should be prosecuted and investigated, and all of the weight of the NDIS Commission should fall down on them as hard and as fast as possible. I guess our frustration is plan management is a legislated support. It's one of only 3 supports that is required to be registered. So the Commission knows who all of these providers are. And then equally, the agency holds all the funds right up until the point of claim. So why has it taken the crack team of the Fraud Fusion Task Force 12 months to figure out who these providers are and the dodgy stuff that they're doing? I think many on the call today have probably lodged, fraud tip-offs and other things over the last couple of years about many of these providers. So we're kind of scratching our head as to kind of why now and why all of a sudden the big fanfare for it. We've been reporting and notifying government.
Why now?
Yeah, we've been reporting and notifying the government for the better part of 2 years about some of this stuff. So it's not surprising. At some point in time, we always knew that the dirty laundry of our sector was going to be aired. That it's just inevitable. And I think the sooner these chunky providers can be shown the door, I think the better it's going to be for our sector.
But no
one of the
sector,
things that I'm pleased with.
No sector escapes having less than savoury people within it. It doesn't matter which industry it is.
100%.
And I think I made the comment online somewhere, and I really do think that occasionally I have zero filter, but that's okay. It's just as easy for all of us to say, not all politicians are bad, right? We can't tar them all with the same feather. Or can we? I mean, that's the question. You can't tar all people or all sectors or all except for used car salesmen. But that's the ambivalence of it all. Jess, I'm not sure if you heard this morning, I heard it on the media very early this morning, that there has been even more of significant payment delays in disability payments. So not NDIS, but disability payments. And they're looking at racking up like 180 days delay in having the claims paid. And that's on an existing payments platform with government. And that's without, I believe, without plan managers handling that. So that's what I heard this morning. It's gone from being 80 days for settling payment claims to 180 odd days. I mean, is that the future that we are looking at?
Oh, look, I think, so for anyone who doesn't know, prior to joining DIA, my last role inside the agency was establishing the Digital Partnership Office. So, all the APIs and a lot of the digital space and digital capability. I find it funny, we have a multi-channel payment system and claim system today. You can claim through the portal, through a bulk upload form. You can claim via APIs. You can claim soon to be via CPOS and e-invoice. So we have a multi-channel kind of system in train at the moment, and that doesn't remove the need for plan managers. If anything, it probably heightens the need. So, I have a very kind of practical lens on what the future of plan management looks like, and also, what the government-wide and whole of government's digital capability. We've always known for a long period of time the volume of claims, the volumes of payments that plan managers are going to do will slowly reduce over time. But I don't think we're ever going to get to the stage, at least not in the next of the scheme, where plan management is not needed in some way, shape, or form.
Rehan,
And
Hollie,
Hollie, Angela, sorry, I just wanted to drop in there. You talked about the delays in disability payments and in other systems, and you asked Jess, are we going to see something like that? Could I just pop the word pace into the conversation? 18 months of testing. And, at MyCareSpace, I haven't come across a single person that is having a good experience with their PACE plan today. And that took 18 months to get to this point. So
I guess we all
I don't know what the answer is to that, but
yeah, I guess, Bianca, we all sound that we don't have a lot of faith in government being able to pull off big projects, particularly that are technical, require payments platforms, require all sorts of different interfaces. And I'm not sure that I have anything to defend government for. I mean, we've only got to look at, can I say it, NBN, and many other things. They are notorious for poor planning. They are notorious for dropping emotive descriptions and words and designing things on the back of who knows what. And we're eliminating paper, so it'll be on a tablet and sending that through to someone. But it's that notoriety. It is in the hands of human beings making decisions of which they are not qualified to do. I don't mean to talk down politicians, but I'm just saying they are not qualified to do it. I spent 10 years in a political organisation as the only politician elected that could read financial statements. And we are putting our faith in electing people who have no real expertise of what they are making choices and decisions about. Rehan, I want to ask you, because you brought this up to me offline. There's a huge emphasis of fraud, and that is why they want to have an automatic payment system and have it all go, have digital capability and remove the human factor. Please highlight for us how, when the human factor does intercede, what it does uncover.
Yeah, I think that, and like linking, I guess, into choice and control as well. Like we have, and I encourage it. I wish every single client with us would have the capability to do this. The review and accept and declining of every single invoice that we get through, because I think ultimately the person receiving the support is going to know best what did and didn't happen, and their immediate family members as well. So I think that we have just seen, just from that process where we're involved in every claim, there is a lot of payment errors that I'm sure all plan managers uncover in terms of accidental double billing. There is, even just typos that come through and you go, hold on, this looks like, these are things that are getting picked up all the time, and that we all know if they were submitted without human intervention, they would currently be funded. So I guess I'm a little bit confused with, with the plans for plan management, the talk of automating the system. How are they intending? Is this all going to be automated? That seems like a very big task. I think that every plan manager would love to completely automate their business and be completely detecting every incidence of fraud and not touching any invoice. I think that's probably where people have been pushing, but it's not possible to do. We've got much more efficient, but we're not there yet. So I guess when there's all this talk of change, it would be good to see, okay, how is the current roles of what we want plan management to do, which I don't think have been very well defined, especially recently, in terms of where they want us looking. And is that all going to be in-house? Is that going to be contracted out separately? Is it all going to be NDIA staff doing that? Because there's a very big workforce currently within plan management as a whole. And I don't think they're just employed to do nothing. Everyone's doing a role.
There's a few of us that are employers here, and speaking as an employer who's, employed hundreds of people, the last thing I want to do is put on more staff that I don't need.
Yeah. And I think maybe there's efficiencies to be gained, but but then once again, we're talking government and efficiency. So I'd love to see just yeah, what is the roadmap? I guess we're all sort of murky on that. And why is that? How is that more cost effective? How does that enable choice and control? How does that, provide separation for clients from their providers to where they want to intervene and they want insight, put a stop to payments, query them, dispute them? Yeah, I guess that's my question mark.
Bianca,
Angela,
can you
I
share with
was
us?
gonna say,
Yeah, can you share with us what's the gold standard of plan management look like?
oh, look, could I just comment on Rehan's statement there about fraud, managing fraud? In Plan Hero, we have what we call a 3I review. And who's going to be doing the 3I review if the plan managers aren't there, especially for those big numbers that we see come through? It has to be looked at by 3 people before it's paid to make sure that it's valid. So, I completely agree with what he's saying there, the role of a plan manager to monitor fraud. We're doing that all the time as part of our everyday business, or the good plan managers are. So who's going to do that in future? So the gold standard of a plan manager is not just paying bills. It's looking at those invoices. And you mentioned about errors, rate creep, providers charging weekend rates on weekdays. Who's going to look at the date range on an invoice and make sure that those numbers are correct? Budgeting. Who's going to help participants budget? Now, that is in the realm of plan management, which has been a little bit murky. I will admit, how much support does a plan manager need to give a participant? That is often dependent on the plan manager itself and what they pride themselves on. But budgeting is in the role of plan management. And today I was looking at the NDIS reviews summary on the proposed NDIS navigator, who it appears is going to do every single thing that every other person was doing, including plan managers and support coordinators. But I don't see anything there about budgeting and financial advocacy and financial support. So I'm pretty curious which navigator is going to do that for a participant when your plan manager is doing that today.
Look, every day we are full of more questions, and I've yet to hear any of the answers. We speculate a lot. Jess, you've had endless webinars that run for hours. You're notorious on that because you always say, I'm not leaving till all your questions are answered. So in your view, and your members are not just plan managers, it's a wider group, a wider cohort. What are you hearing? Because I've spoken to a couple of support coordinators, and one of them being on your board. They are as concerned as plan managers. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Do you think after how many years of Zooms and things would be better at that?
No,
Anyway,
I always think that.
It's always got to be someone.
I forgot to close 2 of my doors, and I'm just sitting here going, yeah, no.
Just before I answer that question, to Rehan's point and Bianca's point as well around workforce, there's just under 19,000 plan managers nationally working, 18,730 at the end of last financial year, dotted across the country. So from a workforce perspective, do we think there's going to be agency staff replacing all of those? God, no. The agency currently has 6,500, 7,000 workers nationally. That's just plan management. That's before we get to support coordination and other kind of intermediary services. So there's some 50-odd thousand workers nationally across support coordination, psychosocial recovery coach, plan management, LAC, etc. So is this going to be a full agency function? No. The horse is well and truly bolted on that, and the level of support that participants require, it just physically cannot be a public service function. Everyone that we speak to, all of our members and the sector generally, is really nervous, not so much about the conceptual idea. I think conceptually everyone around the table can go, we can do this better and we should do it better. There's a lot of gaps between plan management, support coordination, LAC, psychosocial recovery coaches, liaison officers in health, justice, education. There's a lot of gaps to fall through. And the idea of navigation is to try and go, no, that's it. We're going to actually stop these gaps from happening. And at a really high level, I think everyone that we speak to goes, yeah, that's a really good thing. And it should be available to everyone with a disability, not just those in the scheme. So it's kind of like, at a policy level, you go, tick, tick, that's great. The rubber hits the road, and to Hollie's point earlier about, well, how are you going to implement it? And that's where everyone gets quite nervous and scared and frustrated, because historically implementation is never a strong suit of government. And what we don't want to see is, LAC 2.0, where, the original concept of LACs back in 2016 was amazing, and it was all about capacity building and person-centered support. And what we've ended up in 2024 is an administrative function that's an extension of agency planning. So what we don't want to see is this fantastic idea that gets those policy tick, tick, tick situations being implemented and delivering kind of perverse outcomes and incentives. The same thing and the same conversation that happened 2013 through 16 around support coordination and LAC and plan managers kind of being the panacea to all of the issues between the scheme and mainstream and community supports has played out again in the NDIS review report. I think the word navigator is mentioned on average 3 times per page in the report, and it really comes across as, we're not quite sure how to do this, so we'll just kind of inject the navigator here and they'll fix it. And that's really, the challenge and the frustration that we've always had in the intermediary landscape. So, do we think it's the end to support coordination and it's just going to be an LAC program moving forward? No. And I think if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, kind of out of my cold, dead hands, will DIA let that happen? At a functional level, and it doesn't matter whether it's support coordination or plan management, so service coordination or financial coordination or management, participants must be able to exercise their consumer choice. And they must be able to functionally, if they get crap service from a provider, they've got to be able to fire them and go somewhere else. And without that, you have stagnating levels of service and quality, which is what we see in the LAC program. There is no incentive to do better. There is no incentive to deliver extra service because everyone's delivering the same level of service. Everyone's getting paid the same. So there needs to be varying functions. There needs to be varying levels of specialization. We have a couple of members in DIA that are, they deliver support, coordination, and plan management services to specific cohorts. So we've got one member that just works with participants with MS. We've got other members who just work in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander settings. So the level of specialization they have that's then applied to support coordination and plan management is through the roof. And we don't want to see that lost in whatever this future state looks like.
Because so we keep coming back to the fact that participants are supposed to have choice and control. And
100%.
From a very basic view,
we see some massive opportunities.
Yeah, but to eliminate choice and control because government thinks there's ways of doing it better, and there's always ways of doing it better. And I mentioned very early, human-centered design. I'm not just tossing that out there, Jess, because it's a really cool word right now. But the NDIS, and again, I'm new to this. I've only been in this world for a year, and from a board perspective and one company perspective. However, what I have understood is that no 2 plans are the same. No 2 participants are the same. So how are we going to remove a human factor and think for a minute that our participants will be better off? Yes,
I'd add there, I know that, and I'm sure there's other people in here that have had the same experience. I know that the agency is capable of having a very smooth experience. And I think probably my personal interaction and the team would have seen that with the hospital to home team that works within the NDIA. Like I have seen, catastrophic things happen to people and the plans move very quickly. There's someone from the agency calling the mobile number of members of our team. They're liaising with the SC. That's the quickest I've seen things move. And then on the flip side, we've got, a client the other day called us in tears because they've had a change of circumstance in for a very valid change and they haven't heard anything for 4 months and 3 months. So there's just a very big variation. And I know they currently can do it, and it's probably very resource intensive. And I think, finding that balance about what they're going to do, because that's not everyone can have a hospital to home coordinator from the NDIA making their plan, but that is a very good experience. But the other end is probably too far away from that at the moment, I think.
And I have a question for Jess, Angela.
And Angela, we see that playing out in.
Fair enough.
You got a
Sorry,
question
Jess.
from the panel,
There's something
Jess.
I wanted to ask you, Jess. We can all agree
Yep.
that the NDIS review was absolutely incredible in the consultation process that went on behind it. In the 7 years that I've been here, it is the first time I've seen something come out that truly took the opinion from every part of the industry. So Jess, do you think it's possible that, seeing that we're talking about a pretty major change here, do you think they're still going to do that consultation process around plan management with participants and plan managers in the marketplace, find out the support that we're delivering and the failings that we see, asking participants what they want? Do you think maybe that's still coming?
Yes, short answer. One of the things that we're working on quite hard with government is to ensure that co-design and ensure that process. It was promised, it's the foundation of the review. If Bill's on record saying there will be co-design around all of this once, he's on record 1,000 times. And I think that'll be the interesting thing with this legislation coming is I think a lot of the people in the community, and it's certainly what DIA will be doing, depending on what the legislation says and what it's about. How can you be, proposing legislation without having done that co-design piece first? So I think there'll be a lot of discussion around that. We do know, and I'm like everyone in the room, nervous about possible legislation coming in so soon, particularly given the recommendations haven't been accepted yet formally. So there's kind of some structural things there.
That timing on that is just obscene.
And I think that the challenge there is going to be, what does it say? We know from comments of the minister publicly that there's going to be rounds of legislative change. So I'm cautiously waiting to see what comes through in this round, and whether it's cleaning a few little things up that they need to in the interim versus kind of the wholesale structural change that the review is proposing. We just don't know yet, and we'll wait for that. But the last thing that I just wanted to kind of wrap up and agreeing with Rehan about kind of that view and having that oversight and that human interaction. We have seen government heavily automate in social services in the not too recent past, particularly when we look at robo-debt as a prime example, where they used data matching and they used algorithms to try and automate some of these things. And your automation is only as good as how it's designed and what the inputs are and what you're trying to work with. So, even in that process, it was quite clear that you still need a human set of eyeballs to be able to validate what those automated processes are spitting out, because and 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2.
So should the Royal Commission just get ready for a separate NDIS automation review now? Just get the letterheads and the books ready. I'm being facetious here on purpose, Jess, because that we don't have anything else to base our concerns on other than fact, history, performance. And, you brought up robo-debt. I was still trying to pretend to be measured and sensible, and only brought up NBN. But, we've got robo-debt and the fact that there's going to be rounds and rounds of legislation. That means laws changed that can't be walked back easily to a cohort of people that should be focusing on something else completely different than, what the flavour of the month feels they should make a new law about.
Yeah, look, there's kind of two levels to this. There are some bits of the legislation that need to be tweaked and changed regardless of the NDIS review, and they've kind of been sitting there waiting for a while. And we're not so nervous about those things. But there's wholesale change and then there's small change. And I think for we have to wait and see. Speculation is never good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
Jess
is measured and sensible. He's not speculating.
Yeah. One of the things that DIA has done though is we've cleared our calendar for the next couple of weeks to make sure that if something does pop up, that we go, oh, this is not great. We've got the resources and the availability to be able to jump on it and start advocating heavily. I'm actually up in Canberra today and for the rest of the week, having discussions with different members of Parliament and senators and a series of stakeholders, in anticipation of some of this stuff. So, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we'll wait to see what the drafts look like at the first reading, should there be one.
Angela,
Okay, it's actually,
can I just say that we all agree that we need. Yeah, no, I was going to just really quickly, we need digital improvement. We know that, but we are solving a complex human problem. It needs humans as well. It
is complex, and we all appreciate that. What we don't appreciate is not having clarity about what people have coming up in the future when they have established, built, and invested in businesses. Thank you very much to all of our panel. I did promise you a hard 2 p.m. or 1:59 finish. I was wrong again on that one. A quick reminder to everyone out there, if you are in Canberra on Friday, look us up. I'm easy to find online. If you're at the DSE conference next week, again, easy to find. Thank you very much to our panelists, to Simon Edwards, to Hollie Hughes, and a big thank you to Credability Systems for making their resources available for setting up PMAG, the advocacy group that we are fighting for. We're here for you. Reach out to us, whatever we can do. I'm just a different version of all of you. And together, honestly, they are not in control here. We are. Please don't forget that. They need your vote, and that's where it counts. And I will remind you of that until we fix this and sort it through. We will catch you again. We will do another webinar with different people, maybe same, depending on feedback. Have a good day. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, everyone.